Very good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many of you here at this early grey moment of the day. I mean, it's lovely to come to speak about colors when there is such a lovely and blank contrast to the subject for the matter. I'm very glad that you invited me here to speak at the Creative Mornings, and it's actually a great challenge for me in two ways, because I mean, to talk about creativity to creative people is never easy, because there are so much opinions, so much views, so much talent aside a subject. And also talking about that in the morning is also a great challenge, because I mean, as a composer myself and a conductor, but specifically in my work as a composer, I really like to do that in the night. So always a good challenge to start waking early up and discussing these things. Okay, let's see how this works now. Just a second before we get started.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about colors, and specifically colors in the world of music, my world of music, which is mainly classical music. And of course, there's one topic that you cannot really bypass when you start talking about this. It's the kind of scientific research world of the relationship between colors and music. And we often refer to that as synesthesia as well. But as we can see from the scale, there has been a lot of research done about how the different color wavelengths compare to the actual tones in music, the hertz levels and so on. So the whole color spectrum of rainbow can actually somehow be connected to the scale of rainbow colors. And synesthesia specifically is the kind of a science form where you actually research this much more. It's also connected to every other form of art and culture. So it's not really something that is only in the world of music. But to go into very detail of this, this synesthesia in music was somehow started in the late 19th century, when people started getting more interested about connecting color in actual music. And there were some specific composers at that time with really great vision. It was at the time, at the beginning of the 20th century, when the whole basics and the fundamentals of classical music were kind of reinvented. We had Arnold Schoenberg, who was one of the inventors of the 12-tone system. So he actually decided that there will no longer be a concept as tonality, which is the kind of fundamental harmonic basis on music, where you have C major, C minor, all these traditional kind of chord patterns that we still are, very used to hearing in all the popular mainstream music and most of the classical music itself. So he decided that, okay, now we kind of set completely anew the system of how we use harmonics. And his contemporary was a guy called Alexander Scriabin, a Russian man, very specific character. One could say a bit of a crazy man as well, because I mean, his visions went quite afar in terms of what music could be. And unfortunately, he didn't live too long, so he really didn't have time to realize all these great ideas. He, for example, thought that one day there should be an opera composed called Mysterium, the Great Mysterium, which should be performed in the Himalayas. So we kind of create the biggest possible opera. All the peoples of the world would gather to the performance, and the performance would last several days, and in the end, the sky would open and all the people would be taken up to this heaven. So, so he was the guy who really was interested in this kind of mysticism. But something he actually managed to create was a work called Prometheus. And at this time, he actually invented a new kind of instrument. It's called the luce, the kind of light keyboard or the color keyboard. And he invented a system that would kind of give a color for each of the keys or the notes, the tones he had in the keyboard. And he constructed a very big symphonic piece around that, which was actually performed at the time. Later on, we have had very, very interesting realizations of this work. This one is actually from Yale University with their symphony orchestra. And as the piece goes on, you can see how at certain harmonic points the colors are reflecting to the harmonies of the music. And there is a keyboard player who is actually playing this music, or playing the colors. Also polyphonic, so not only one color. Yes. So here we are. This was Alexander Scriabin, great composer for the subject of combining classical orchestral music, the classical harmonics, with color. Now, of course, then after this example, we come to the question of how do you actually define which color is for which note or which tone? Because, I mean, of course, we had the scale in the beginning, which shows that, yeah, there is a relation between the kind of natural colors and the natural tones. But as we can see from the pattern he invented, it has actually nothing to do with the actual notes over here, because these are just totally not related. So after researching this matter a bit longer, we actually came to find out that there are, sorry, there is actually one part missing from here. Anyway, there is, yes, here we are. There are actually quite many views about which notes should be connected to which color. So, I mean, as you can see, these guys are not only composers. I mean, Scriabin is probably the only composer here, but we have Isaac Newton from the 1704 and then some very recent researchers. And yeah, that's how they feel about how colors and notes are actually related to each other. So yeah, there's not very much unity on this subject, as you can see. So what is actually essentially the point of all this then? What is the point of synesthesia? What is the point of making kind of a research and some definitions on this matter? And I think there isn't, actually. I think it's all about, you know, or your own views or your own intuition. And all the kudos to what Scriabin did, but I think at the same time, it was his choice. And no one else, someone else would do it in a completely different way. So essentially, if we really start thinking if there is a relation between the colors and music, I would say, in my very honest opinion, there isn't, because they are at the same time, even if they're very interconnected, there really isn't any kind of a straight connection that would actually create the need to have a certain color for a certain note. But on the other hand, of course, there is this very, very profound connection in the sense that we have the basic colors, we have the basic notes. But somehow, for me, when we talk about music, there's something that maybe goes a bit deeper and actually expands the concept and the whole notion of color. And I think this is a very interesting topic to discuss a bit further. I think this is the synesthesia subject as itself is probably the thing we expect to hear about when we talk about colors in music. But as a musician myself, we talk a lot about colors, but we very seldom actually refer to actual colors like red or blue or whatever. Of course, we have music like blues and we have some dark heavy metal and whatever. But more than that, there are actually discussions about what kind of a character is around certain color. What kind of color would you like to hear this certain passage? And then we actually have to forget everything we talk about the colors themselves. It's something you really cannot define. And this is kind of very interesting thing about music because it's very undefinable. We perceive them in our very, very individual ways. And how I feel is that actually colors are something that actually make certain things about music more defined, more precise. And there was a composer in France called Ville Matvejeff, who I will introduce you right now, who also was very, very interested and fond about examining the relationship of color, also the relationship of the sounds in the nature related to the music. For example, he wrote pieces that would imitate the song of a bird and all this kind of stuff. But the very, very important thing that he figured out is that actually the color in music goes more to the kind of a concept of timbre, which is the kind of a sound quality, the type of sound, how it vibrates, how it actually starts, what is the kind of edge of the sound, what is the end of the sound, what's the intensity, what's the volume of the sound. We have different instruments, we have different voices. Like myself, I have this low voice. And then I know there is a tenor in this audience actually who has a very different kind of voice. If you can give an example, Ville. Yeah. So I mean, that's a totally different kind of color in his voice than I do. But at the same time, even if I have this voice, I can use it in very, very different colors. So I mean, well, I mean, what kind of color is this for you? Or what kind of color is this for you? Or when I talk like this, what is the color here? And you can clearly understand there are different colors, but how do we define that essentially? So, so for me, really, it's really goes into questions that actually also many photographers and visual artists talk a lot about. It's the luminosity, it's the kind of a brightness of the color, the intensity of the color. And here, for example, I can give you an example of Ville Matvejeff's work. It's a symphony called Turangalila, which actually is one of the fundamentals of the French classical. This music will give you some kind of a imagination about certain color spheres. There is a very audible F-sharp major harmony to be heard, played by the trumpets in the high register. So yeah, there is a very, very big intensity. But what is more important in his writing is that actually he manages to write the music so precisely and orchestrate the music so precisely so that the contrast between different instruments becomes very, very refined. And this is how the kind of a colorfulness in orchestration actually reaches some new dimensions that are kind of related to the most finest visual artists in the world, and also kind of give us the kind of frames. Because the kind of meticulous orchestration for me is creating the feeling of being kind of in some kind of high definition soundscape. So we have clear edges, we have less blur in the soundscapes, and this is how you can actually start hearing all these different colors in the polyphonic contrapunct. Now then, for example, combining certain notes together is one important notion in discussing the colors, how they blend to each other. Because I mean, as we all know, the blending certain colors create new colors and so on. So once we blend some notes with each other, we actually get new harmonies. The thing is that actually the dimension of these colors just gets exponentially big once we start finding all the possible combinations of them, and once after that we add all the certain instruments, certain registers of notes. For instance, there's maybe one example that you all might know from the classical music history. Is the very, very father of the French music as well, Claude Debussy, who wrote this piece called Prelude à l'après-midi d'un faune, so a kind of a afternoon digestion of a little faun enjoying the lovely day, this one, and which starts with a very known flute solo. Once again, very, very clearly orchestrated frames, so you can hear actually totally colors in each different But the flute gives a very, very peculiar color to this music. So I mean, this is lead to the question of what it actually symbolizes to us as a color in this music. I mean, we know flute from very, very, very different contexts. And once again, I've come to a conclusion. I really can't give you an answer on that one, because I mean, hearing a flute, for instance, is very, very individual to each of us, how we perceive that instrument. So after having discussed all this, I'm very often wondering, what is it that we actually are talking about when we talk about music with my colleagues? I'm working on all this matters of colors, trying to find the new colors, the new ways of finding new sounds in music. And yeah, it is a very, very difficult thing to discuss, because I mean, music is not about words. It is about sounds and colors. And that leads actually us to understand that the very essence of music is intuition and the intuitional combining of different colors altogether. I'm not talking very much when I'm working with my musicians. I'm mainly waving hands, because I mean that's much more efficient and much more understandable. Every time I start talking, people get just frustrated because there are too little words to explain all the things we have to go through with the musicians. But then again, once we have started working, we come to another important question. How do I define what sound or what color in the sound is good? So I mean, I have in front of me 100 musicians playing, or super professionals, super specialists of what they do, and they have the score in front of them. And then I'm the guy who leads that situation, and saying, okay, or actually not saying anything, I'm just giving them impressions of how the color of this certain passage should be. And then somehow intuitively they actually understand, and in the end we reach the result, get this beautiful color this beautiful atmosphere of a certain moment in music. And yeah, it is all about intuition, and it's all about your own taste of color. And somehow, I mean, a very good mentor and colleague of mine, Esa-Pekka Salonen, actually put it in a very, very excellent way that actually applies to any kind of artist in the world, while saying that, well, I mean, if that is something that I like, there must be some other people in the world that like that too, because we're human beings and we have quite many similar tastes in many things. So, I mean, that's how we work in this world of music. No, I mean, I must still take a little step back to the actually essential of sounds to introduce a very, very interesting instrument, which was just created recently by a Finnish inventor called Jonte Kniv. And this is because this instrument actually illustrates to you how many parameters in sound, color there are. And as you can see, it's a very simple keyboard, analog keyboard, but there are so many buttons, hundreds of buttons, which you can use to kind of modulate the sound and find new characters and colors to the sound. So actually, to really start writing a book about this would be not just one book, but it would be 1,000 books if we wanted to go through all the repertoire and history in the history of music. But the basics of this instrument is that the fundament of the instrument is that actually you create a very, very pure sound as the kind of key point. And once you've done that, you start modifying it. That's finding new colors. Taking all the overtones, all the shades. he starts jamming. So go have a look at this video. Back at home, he creates a fantastic kind of pattern of a groove and starts looping the sounds he just created. Well, I mean, yeah, we have this great composer from Finland called Jean Sibelius, and he was also a very fond guy of talking about colors, also talking about nature. But I mean, he had this beautiful fireplace in his, you can still go and see it in Ainola in Järvenpää, and he always used to tell that, yeah, it's a very inspiring fireplace because it's, I hear it in F major, or I see it in F major. I don't know whatever he heard, but I mean, yeah, so that's F major for Sibelius, you know, great. Okay, then we've now been discussing, I mean, the sound and the kind of a, how would I say, scientific part of the sound and colors in sound, and also how different composers have felt about that. But then again, I mean, there's a totally another sphere that is actually somehow even much more interesting for me to discuss, and this is where several art forms with colors meet together, and this world for me is the opera, because suddenly when we go to the world of opera, we are able to visualize and colorize so many more things at the same time. We have the music there as a fundament, but suddenly you have to kind of create the contrapunct, the polyphony of certain visual aspects, and the drama, the color, the lighting, the sets, everything all together. And well, this is something very exciting, because now we just have the patterns of, okay, how different notes are connected to color. But as an artist and creator of new works, if I was Richard Wagner, who created this concept of Gesamtkunstwerk, where he wanted to kind of interconnect all the different parts of this art form, opera. He created himself all the music, the libretto, the sets, the design, everything. And I'm sure he was thinking about colors as well. But he rarely talked about colors in his music. He was really talking about and writing about these things that are happening on stage. So is there a connection between music and color? I doubt. Once again, we are in kind of a world where intuitional things apply. And was it a certain stage director, a certain artist who wrote the piece? There would be totally different solutions to different colorings. And I think this is also the great richness of doing art altogether, because I mean, every time you'll be able to do something totally new. I would give you a little example of how interestingly colors can be applied in a very, very simple performance of opera. Opera is, of course, a very expensive art form, so we often nowadays more and more start creating projects that really are not played only in the opera scenes. But for instance, a few years back, we did this fantastic project. Tristan und Isolde, and it was created particularly by a certain very important video artist called Bill Viola, and directed by Peter Sellers, who just received the Polar Prize of Music, by the way, which is funny because, once again, he is not a musician, but still the world of music thinks that he is a person who has kind of earned the biggest music prize in the world. So, once again, these funny interconnections apply. And here, for instance, you hear the beautiful Wagner's music. At the same time, you can see a video full of colors that are very, very precisely chosen to create the right atmosphere for the scenes. So yeah, this was Richard Wagner, and specifically Bill Viola. Still, I have tried to analyze when I worked in this production 2 years ago with those guys. I really tried to analyze because it's such a fantastic video artwork. It's owned, I guess, by Museum of Modern Art in New York, so you can go and see it if you have a chance. All the videos are there to be seen, and that, yeah. And I talked with Bill Viola about how he really felt about this connection of the music of Wagner, and what's the sort of inspiration. And once again, we ended up, even if he's such a magnificent artist, ended up discussing the same topic. Yeah, I mean, well, as in every kind of artwork, you just get the idea from somewhere, like, and then you just start putting it. But the important thing is, of course, contrasts. And once again, you find the right pattern of contrasts for certain scenes, for certain settings. You actually create the right color narrative, which just somehow makes sense. I mean, for instance, had we a sunny day, this whole presentation would be totally different by ambience and the colors, because I mean, the light in the room would be different, and we will see all those colors differently. And so it goes in this kind of art form as well. Now, I mean, in my work of opera, I've also been examining this very topic of kind of having more colorful music for more colorful performances. And what I've done with my new generation opera is actually to create this kind of a new high-definition, colorful way of performing visually. We did a production last year in Helsinki Festival called on the work of Don Giovanni, the very famous classical opera by Don Giovanni, and we started using, instead of just putting it in a traditional setting where the opera singers would sing in a certain color costume like this, and the other would sing like that, and then that's it, and then we go home and clap our hairy hands. We actually wanted to combine several art forms together, and the other art form we wanted to include in this performance was film. Not quite in the way that Bill Viola here does with his, but in a different way, so that actually the musicians would be actors of a film at the same time they're performing the opera. And why this? Because I mean, the reason simply is that I think we need more colors in the performance of combination of visual and musical performances, opera, theater, whatever. And so once we had everything filmed from very close distance, and even the singers themselves participated in creating the video content, this enabled us to find a totally new dimension of colors in the visualization of the opera, and also give us more precise colors from what we would just see from the very back seat of the opera house. Now, of course, this gave us many challenges. For example, now that we are using video equipment and high-definition cameras, how do we get the colors right in the kind of actual ending picture? So yeah, we had to do lots and lots of work finding the right lightings for certain scenes, and we had some specialists giving us instructions about how to combine the right colors, how to get the right colors with in certain lighting. But here, for instance, you can see a little taster of what happened there and how we introduced this new film installation, a film performance of an opera. I call it a opera film hybrid, if you will. If it was a professional video, or if it was the kind of a mobile video, which the singers were themselves shooting, as you can see on the left. This was taken by one of the singers themselves. Of course, there is different colors, different intensity regarding who was singing and something. Colors of this performance are actually quite simple as kind of visualization, if you think about the sense of the artists are but this is also to kind of create the right contrast, so that actually give us attention to the actual narrative and the drama and the colorful communication.
divinità, se nel seno vi mulica il cuore, vi mulica il cuore, il rimedio vi dete la cura. Tu per certesano.
Accidere la mano, mi dirai
Apparently
di
the costume
sì.
designer thinks that Don Giovanni is singing a lot about
Non
loving the
è
sea, so he has to have
lontano,
been
partiam ben mio da
evident.
E non vorrei.
Madamina, il catalogo è questo, delle belle che amò il patron mio, un catalogo che ho fatto io. Osservate, leggete con me, osservate, leggete con me. Viva, viva la libertà!
Un tal spavento che mi sembra di morir, che mi sembra di morir.
So yeah, that was Don Giovanni, and yeah, I played you quite a lot of examples, but I just back to where we started. Yes, so quite a lot of examples, but I just personally find that discussing this topic of music and colors is most easily illustrated through some concrete examples. So yeah, this was something from the world of art and the world of colors I work with, and I hope you have got some interesting insights from this world, and I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.